Well, it finally happened, folks, this last week for the very first time this year. Based on our sampling of sales in the Portland metro area, Southwest Washington, Portland, all the bedroom communities, the full Portland metro area, the average sale price for homes that sold this last week dipped below where that number was for roughly the same time period last year. How far did it go? We'll get into that in just a few minutes. I'm Ron Milligan with RE/MAX Select here in Portland's Pearl District. And of course, I've got the weekly market statistics for the full Portland metro area, as I mentioned. First thing up is the inventory, so the supply of the supply and demand equation. The inventory continues to fall. 4747 was the number that we got for active listings, properties available for buyers to purchase. It's down 3.5% from roughly from the previous week. And then based on the same time period last year, the number is up considerably, 99.8%. Last year at this time, the number of active listings was just continuing to fall. The number of new listings this last week was up 91% versus the previous week, but keep in mind the previous week was the week of Thanksgiving. And as we mentioned last week, agents kind of check out, sellers kind of check out. They're a little too busy. They don't put new listings on the market. They don't do price reductions in advance of that, official holiday and then the unofficial holiday, which follows on Friday for Black Friday. The number of price reductions was up considerably versus the previous week. And of course, once again, previous week was Thanksgiving. Again, a lot of agents and sellers saved that price reduction for the week after Thanksgiving when they thought they would get more eyeballs on it. So it was up significantly, up 102% versus the previous week. We had 548 price reductions. Of those 548, 512 were still active on Tuesday morning at 7:30 a.m. and 36 had gone under contract. And of the more significant price reductions, those of $15,000 or more, there were only 274. That number's usually been in the 300s. So we're seeing fewer price reductions and probably has a lot to do with the fewer number of listings that we have on the market. So on the demand side, the number of new pending deals was down versus the previous week. There was a bit of a surprise, if you remember last week, that the number of new pendings just before the holidays was really high. We saw 417 deals go under contract. This last week, this most recent week, that number dropped 16% to 349. That's kind of a surprise. You'd expect the previous week before Thanksgiving to not have a lot of activity and then maybe some follow activity after the holiday. And that seems to be the reverse there. I'm not sure what's going on. We'll just keep monitoring that number. The number of homes sold did jump up versus the previous week, that Thanksgiving week. No surprise there. It was up 23%. 357 was the total number. But that's still on the low side of what we normally have been seeing. That number's usually been in kind of the high 300s, low 400s. And we should have expected maybe a little bit of bounce back from the really low week last week, but we didn't see that. So how did the homes that sold do on the market? On average, they spent 36 days on the market. No change there from the previous week. And versus last year at this time, that was around 24 days on market. The number of median days on market was 20. Last year, it was 9. That percentage of the original asking price, how much did the homes sell for? They sold for 94.6% of the original ask price. That means that sellers had to give up off of their original asking price, discount off their original asking price, around 5.4%. The number of canceled listings was up about 81%. That's kind of a big number. Again, I suspect that a lot of these canceled listings this year are listings that are being canceled and relisted. I'm seeing that a lot in the feeds that I'm looking at. I'm seeing listings that are hitting the market as if they're brand new, and then I look at the history of the listing and it's actually been on the market for several months. So I suspect some of those canceled listings are those sneaky relists. The sneaky new listings is just a relisting, repackaging in the old listing in order to get it to pop again in everyone's online searches. The number of expireds was also way up at 134% increase, but that happens at the end of the month. And of course, during this last week that we're looking at these numbers for, we crossed from November into December. A lot of listings are set to cancel at the end of the month, and many of those may have been relisted as well. So that's why that number is so high. One thing I thought was interesting, that foreclosure and pre-foreclosure number that we've been seeing week after week after week, it had been so steady for, almost no change for probably, about 5-6 weeks so far. 28 and 17, we did see the number of bank-owned properties jump up to 32 and the number of short sales drop down to 1, but still a really insignificant number when we're comparing the number of distressed properties versus the overall number of active and pending listings, which is pushing around 8,000 listings. So the big story is the average sale price. So keep in mind, this is our sampling of numbers. Again, it's for the sampling we take for the full metro area. The market action, which will be coming out shortly for the month of November, we should probably see that maybe by the end of this week. We'll have different numbers because it's just for Portland proper, and our numbers extend beyond Portland. We're doing a sampling for the full Portland metro area. But for the first time this year, the average sale price this year ended up lower than it was last year at roughly the same time period. We clocked in at $579,000, $536,000, and what happened last year is the average sale price jumped up. It jumped up to $601,228. So that's a 3.8% reduction in the average sale price for all the homes that sold last year versus this year. That's the first time that we've seen that. The median, which is supposed to take out a bit of the volatility, and of course there's some volatility when we're working with weekly numbers, a smaller set of properties that have sold. When that happens, we're dealing with a smaller set. We can have a number of big transactions that will skew the numbers higher one week, and maybe an absence of some big transactions that will let the number drop low. The median is supposed to sort of get rid of some of those, some of that volatility with the numbers, some of that up and down. The median this last week was $520,000. The previous week, it was right around $550,000. So there was a big decrease in the median sale price, down 6% from last week to this week. And if we compare that to last year at this time, that number came in at $511,000. So that is still an increase of 1.8% when we're looking at the median. So what are we looking at going forward? Well, I think that we're probably going to look at a continued decrease in the number of listings. So we're at 47. That's around 99%, about 100% more listings this year versus the same time last year. Of course, at the same time last year, we're dealing obviously with a lower number and a quicker decline in the number of active listings. So the supply was going down much faster, buyer demand obviously considerably higher, with interest rates half of what we're dealing with this year. At one point this last year, at the beginning of 2021, the number of active listings, the supply of active listings dipped below 1,600. And right now we're at 47. We'll see how we're doing compared to the last 15 years, because when the October numbers came out, I took the number of active listings, charted it back the last 15 years, and we still had the third lowest number of active listings over the last 15 years. Only 2020 and 2021 had fewer listings available for buyers to choose from. So even though compared to last year it's looking ugly, in the context of the last 15 years, not so bad. So we'll keep watching that. And then when it comes to average sale price, I suspect that we're going to see the average sale price continue to moderate, and we're going to start seeing maybe a bit of jumping back and forth when we look at the average sale price. Maybe one week it's going to be higher than last year, maybe the next week it's going to be lower, and I suspect that we're going to start seeing more of those numbers end up on the lower side versus the same time period last year. So interest rates, I suspect, are probably going to be pretty moderate. I don't suspect we're going to see a lot of changes. The Fed has promised over the next 2 meetings that they will increase the Fed funds rate, which of course doesn't have a direct correlation to residential interest rates. But all the analysts that I've been following feel like we're probably, we saw the peak earlier a couple months ago, or about a month or so ago, when rates went over 7%. They're thinking that that might have been the peak, and that what we're going to be seeing going forward is kind of more of the same. Like right now, one of the lenders that I follow is at 6.125 interest rate. Jumbos are about a point, if not more, lower than that rate, and that's for the 30-year fixed. So we're probably going to see rates be pretty similar. I am seeing an uptick in buyers. The question we don't know, or the answer that we don't know, is how many buyers are going to be entering the market when our spring buying season kicks into gear, because I suspect that there's still going to be a fair number of sellers who are going to be listing in the spring, February, March, April, our traditional beginning of the spring buying season. So what we don't know is, are there going to be buyers who are interested in purchasing at even what feels like a moderated rate versus what we've been dealing with, about a month and a half, 2 months ago? Are those buyers going to be showing up and purchasing? So that's what I have for you this week. As always, all real estate is local, so if you're curious about what's going on in your neck of the woods, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to share what I know and what I can find out. And I'd love a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you know someone who might find this information helpful, please send this video along to them. And thank you very much for watching to the very end. We'll see you next week.